Well, welcome to the very first interview for Captive to Independent. I have Bob Adams here with me, who is in Florida, and I'm going to let Bob tell his story about going from the captive insurance agencies into the independent agencies. And right before we started recording, he was telling me that he did that twice, actually. So tons of great information. I know we're going to hear from Bob and his journey. And really the goal here is that if you are a captive agent who's considering going independent, or maybe you already have and it's not quite what you thought, just to give you some insight into what others have experienced and what it really looks like and what it takes to go from a captive agency to an independent agency. So Bob, thank you so much for being willing to be our very first interview. I'm really excited to hear your story. Can you go ahead and kind of give us a little bit of information on your background and maybe even just how you started in insurance in the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mariah. So I'm actually located in Florida, just outside of Tampa in Lakewood Ranch, Florida, which is really part of Bradenton, Sarasota. I've actually been in the business for 33 years. And started my career at Progressive, call center, one of five guys in the corner, seeing if it would work. Later on, started an agency with Allstate, and that was probably early 2000. Scared to death. Left a really good paying job to start an agency, and what the heck was I trying to do? But we were successful at the Allstate. The problem was at that point in time, politics got in the way, shall we say, here in Florida. And Allstate and the state of Florida were having issues. So I decided to go independent. That was my first shot at going independent. We had been an Allstate agency for, 5 years at that point. We had I think at that point we had about a $3.5 million book of business, and we were still growing. I took the plunge and wrote my letter to Allstate to terminate my contract. I didn't read the fine print.
That seems to be a
highly
standard.
Encourage everybody to understand your contract thoroughly. If you don't understand it, have an attorney review it with you. You do have that right. I didn't understand the contract fully and submitted my letter and terminated on July 1st. I forget the year. I think it was 2008, maybe, and went independent. And if anybody knows what was happening in 2008, it wasn't exactly the best of times financially. We were having a meltdown in the capital markets, but we were very successful making that transition. And one of the things that made
can I back you up just a little bit? So when you said that there was some politics with Allstate that made you want to go captive, when you were thinking about, or when you were thinking about going independent, what was it on the independent side that attracted you to that? What was the driving factor for you to think, you know what, I think this is better for me?
Mentally it was, and I guess really you kind of got to put it in the box of, and I hate to be very state specific in this, but I got to be.
Hey, it's your story.
Florida has always been a challenge. From day one. I mean, it's always been a challenge. Ever since Hurricane Andrew blew through, carriers here in Florida are unbelievably nervous. I started an Allstate career with no homeowners.
Oh, wow.
Zero. The day I launched the agency, they killed the homeowners.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was kind of this evolution of almost a hybrid agency, where they were going out and getting markets outside of their their carrier. So this is kind of the first, think of it as really the first of the Craft Lakes, if you will, from a farmer's perspective. But
and for those of you that don't know, farmers or anything like that are watching, Craft Lake is the brokerage like that's inside with farmers. So then farmers agents can write farmers products, and then Craft Lake. And Allstate's kind of similar, right? They have their captive, and then they have like a brokerage. But with Allstate, from what I understood, maybe it was different in Florida, most of the time they can't go outside the brokerage. If the brokerage can't help, you still can't go out to like outside carriers or direct appointments. Is that right?
Yeah.
So a little bit more restrictive.
Yeah, it might have changed. I don't know. I mean, it's been a long time since with Allstate, but that was kind of the first model of that. And we were very successful in writing business outside of Allstate on the homeowner side, the auto and specialty products. We were doing well within Allstate, but that was kind of the first taste of, hey, wait a second, can I maybe do something different on the independent side? So. Sorry, I got something in my throat.
No, you're good. My puppy just started whining, and I was like, "Oh no, come here!" Yeah. This new puppy. So it happens. They're interviews. He's going to be in the interview now. He'll hang out with me for a minute. There we go. Yeah, this is Mocha.
Hey, Mocha. So anyway, that was kind of the first part of really experiencing what we could do from an independent side. And kind of gave us a taste for it. Yeah. So that kind of started to get you thinking about, maybe there's a better way or a different way. Exactly. And you kind of look at it and you kind of go, okay, wait a second. I'm doing all my home or my auto over here with Allstate, but what if I had other carriers? Now, there were some other driving factors to that too. Like I said, some political unrest, if you will, between the state and Allstate at the time. There was, the requirements of financial services, which I was writing a ton of personal property and casualty, but not doing very much on the financial services. And
I'm so sorry, Bob. I got to pause you for a second. Same here.
Yep. So Allstate was requiring us to do some, write more financial services, things of that nature. I didn't feel like that was where our agency needed to be. So that's one of the reasons why I terminated the contract. Okay. So, that's something to really kind of consider is, what are my requirements from a captive standpoint? And then, you move over to an independent side, and now you don't have one carrier to feed. You've got multiple carriers to feed, and they all want a piece of that pie. So, if you're thinking about going going independent, remember, you're going to have to feed every single one of those carriers. They are going to have certain requirements. So at least they do here in Florida.
Yeah, I think that's a huge misconception. People don't realize that. They think, the captive, they make us hit all these different metrics. But on the independent side, if you don't hit your goal, they pull your contracts. They will pull it. They'll be like, you can't write policies with us anymore. And then you have to roll your book. And we've seen agents do that, and we've tried to help them with the process of that. I mean, it stops all operations. You're just trying to keep your clients.
Yeah. And this is something, I kind of want to keep my timeline here, but I think it's important for people to understand that, at least in the captive world, yes, you're held to a loss ratio to some extent. I know with farmers, I don't even know what my loss ratio was. I honestly never even saw it. So obviously there wasn't a component there that was tied to a bonus or compensation. It was all about new business. Mm-hmm. So you get into the independent side, and guess what? You're now going to be held responsible for your loss ratio.
Mm-hmm.
That's yes, we can put numbers on the board, but when
how do you control that? I know of a huge agent down in Florida. Actually, this happened to him a year ago. He lost his largest home carrier because of loss ratios, and he wrote good business, but they just Loss ratios went up. It's crazy.
I lost a great home carrier when I was an independent before Farmers, and they canceled my contract because I went from 11% loss ratio to a 2,000% loss
Holy
ratio
cow!
due to sinkholes.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
How was I going to control a sinkhole claim?
Yeah, right. We get mad about them changing our bonus structure at Farmers, right? And you're like, I can't control sinkholes. That's such a huge difference.
We were having a rash of sinkholes in Plant City. It's an agricultural community. We live on Swiss cheese, and you drain the aquifer, and the next thing you know that happens is an entire neighborhood that I wrote. They were brand new houses, and that's what the carrier wanted. So, loss ratios come into play when you're in the independent world. And that's one of the things that people need to be very concerned about. You're going to be held to a lot different matrix and a lot different KPIs than you are in the captive world, because, it's just one of those things. You asked how we control the loss ratio. We don't write everybody. We're very selective in who we write. And if we write them, I hate to say this, but you got to be very, very selective in who you're writing. So,
which is funny because that's another misconception right on the captive side. They tell us, sell value and sell these particular types of clients. And like they have this target client they want you to go after, and agents get upset that they kind of can't write everybody or that they're not competitive with everybody. But in the independent side, sure, you might be able to offer everybody a product, but do you want to, right? Is that the right thing? Like you're saying, you're still selective. So there's a lot more similarities, I think, than people realize.
Oh, guaranteed there is.
Yeah. But anyway, so you were saying that the financial services requirements, you decided to go independent. How did you find your, sorry, go ahead. But I want you to also answer kind of, how did you find, did you go cluster or did you go direct? Can you also kind of let us know about that as you were transitioning?
Clusters or aggregates, they didn't even exist at the time.
Oh, okay.
I was blessed in the fact that I'm a relationship person, so I build relationships, and I started with one person. He used to be a Allstate agent. He went to a carrier to be a marketing rep. I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, can you get me a GMAC appointment?" Yeah, no problem. And I just started with one and kept going. And just kept, you got to keep, it was kind of old school at the time. We kind of just kept adding carriers. I was kind of blessed in the sense that, if you remember, this was the first time that Allstate had really tried this model where they did the broker business and they didn't really have a brokerage set up. So when I left, they basically said, you can take your entire book with you.
Wow. That's great. Big miss on Allstate's part, but
you own that. You can take it with you. So all those homeowners carriers gave me appointments because I was writing good, solid business with them. At the time, we weren't really having an insurance crisis in Florida. We did, but we didn't. So I was able to take a lot of my business with me. Nice. So that softened the blow a little bit. I think one of the biggest challenges we face today, going from a captive to independent, is simply finding the markets. That is your biggest number one challenge right now. Homeowners carriers here in Florida. This is nationwide. It's not just Florida, but go try and find a carrier that wants to give you an appointment for auto.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of how, and now, we do have these aggregators and these clusters and these groups because they've kind of went and said, we're going to bring in these agents and we're going to do all these things and get the, business go up and running. But they are the ones kind of getting you the appointments. Those direct appointments are really difficult. And even with some of those clusters and aggregators today that I talk to, there's a lot of them are saying, if you're captive, just stay there right now. Just wait, because they are even having a hard time getting their carriers to say, yes, you can add more agents into your group.
Yeah.
So it's a very different time.
I mean, it is normally you would be able to go to those aggregators or clusters and jump right on board and start writing business. Today, it's a different story because you're absolutely correct. They don't necessarily want to add those. The carriers aren't interested in adding more subcodes, sub-producers.
Yeah, it's definitely really hard. So when you made the switch, you said that there was some things in your contract that you weren't aware of. Yeah. And you had advised, of course, getting an attorney. I would say I experienced the same thing because I had 2 farmers agencies, and I never sent the contract to an attorney until I started this business and started working with an attorney, because you have to have your own contracts when it's your own business. It's different than the agencies. And I had him read it, and he actually said to me, I can't believe any of you guys signed this. He was like, this is totally one-sided and you don't have any leverage or control here. And it was really surprising to me. What was it in the contract, if you don't mind sharing? What was it that was kind of the big, oh, I didn't know that back then? So
much like the farmer's contract, the Allstate contract had a guaranteed payout. They didn't call it contract value. They basically tied it to your revenue. And at the time it was, I think, 1.5 times revenue, whatever your commissions were. And I was thinking, I'll get a lump sum payout. No,
not so much.
Not so much. And when you're transitioning from one agency to another agency, cash is king. And you need that working capital to keep the lights on, keep the employees, keep everything flowing, the marketing and everything. So what happened was they said, by the way, we own all your data. Okay. We own all your data and you need to give it to us. We know you've got it sitting in this CRM outside of Allstate. We need for you to send us that file.
Really? And that was in the contract that you had to turn over all data before payment.
All data belonged to them, regardless of whether it was sitting on your CRM or theirs. And they said, we want that data file. And if you don't, we're not going to pay you.
Dang. That's crazy. Definitely look for that in your contract. Oh my gosh.
And I refused to send it to them, and they refused to pay me. And finally I said, fine, here it is. And they said, well, it's not all here. And I'm like, what? Anyway, so long story short, it took a while for me to get payment. And on top of that, it wasn't a lump sum payment. It was 12 equal installments over a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So with farmers, they do, I think you get 3 quarterly payments, at least at this time.
Yeah. Here in Florida, what they're doing with the agents is, from what I understand, they are doing, it's over 18 months.
The farmers agents down there now, because farmers pulled out of Florida.
Yeah, because they pulled out of Florida. They're paying them 3 payments over 18 months. So
I haven't heard that part. That's
every 6
insane.
months, which I think is crazy. I'd be charging them about an 11% interest rate.
Yeah, no kidding. Because I mean, how do you have that money tied up for that long?
Exactly. So I mean, there are challenges when you move from captive to independent. You need to understand your contract. That's the first thing. And I mean, understand it thoroughly, especially your payout and anything that's owed to the carrier, because they're gonna they wrote the contract. They know what's in the contract.
Mhm.
Well, Allstate knew what's in the contract. Uh,
Depends on farmers these days
well,
sometimes.
they're run by 4-year-olds. Anyway, so when you make that switch, and then have an understanding of where your carriers are going to be. Are you going to be able to get appointments? Are you going to go with an aggregator? What does that look like? Don't just jump and think everything's going to be, roses,
Hunky-dory.
because there will be challenges. There will be significant challenges. What does your marketing look like? Where's your data? I mean, that's the number one thing right now is where's my data housed? If I'm relying on a carrier, you're done. You might as well just pack it in. Because
I just sold my agency like 2 days ago. It was official. I'm not a farmer's agent anymore. And in the final paperwork, it specifically says in there that the CRM that they have internally through Salesforce, that everything that's in there is theirs. It's all theirs. It doesn't have anything in there about anything outside, which is great. And you're not obviously supposed to take any kind of customer data with you, but everything that you put in there. So if I had been going independent and didn't have my own system, I would be starting over from scratch. So data is huge. And the companies know that, which is why they're making it harder and harder for us to have anything outside. They want you to have to use their stuff because they know the power of the data.
And they don't want, absolutely. Absolutely. They're not stupid people. They want to make sure they lock their data down.
Yeah.
And us as agency owners should be doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We should own our data. And you know what? If the carrier wants it, they're going to have to subpoena me for it. So they're going to have to sue me for it. Because it's my data too.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyway, I mean, that's probably the single most important thing I can tell people is own your data, understand your contract, because I'm telling you, when you leave, that will become an issue if you're not prepared for it.
So when you went independent and then you went captive again. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Wow. So I sold my independent, Nicole's my wife. We sold our agency in 2015, our independent agency. I don't want to say I was burned out. I needed a change, and I built an agency and was now ready to kind of just watch my family. My oldest daughter was leaving for college, and I'm like, So, you start doing a little life reflecting, if you will. So sold the agency. I kind of went fishing for about 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah. I don't suggest that at 48 years old. Everybody else goes back to work and you're by yourself with the dog. So, so I don't highly recommend that to everybody.
Sure, the dog was happy.
Unbelievable. So, so then I knew I was coming back to the insurance industry. I just didn't know in what capacity. I spent a little time managing a commercial insurance agency for a large payroll company. I found out that it's, anybody that's owned a business and built businesses has a hard time working for other people. I'm basically, a ruined person in that sense. I didn't do well there. So anyway, I knew I was coming back. I just didn't know what capacity. And then farmers, I was headed to starting a a boutique agency geared around marine risk, specifically marine risk. And I didn't want it to be big. I just kind of wanted something small, manageable, but I wanted it to be specific towards marine risk. And I kind of started that path. And then about that time, farmers kind of showed up. And they were like, yeah, we're coming to Florida. We need some seasoned agents. Love to talk to you. So I said, well, it can't hurt, right? So I started talking to them. We launched in 18. This probably would have been early 17 that I was talking to them. Next thing you know, I sat down with Nicole and we were like, do you want to start it all over again? Do you want to do everything yourself? Mm-hmm. Do you have it in you to do everything yourself? Marketing, everything. I mean, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I do. And so there's some, I thought it would be easier to go with a farmer's agency. And I hate to use that word easier, more streamlined. I love to sell. That's my passion. I love selling. I walk into a room, I'll talk to anybody and we'll strike up conversations. The problem with that was with farmers, we had some significant challenges in Florida from day one. That was kind of I probably should have jumped ship then, but yeah, I'm the kind of person, I'm going to grind it out. We're going to find a solution. We're going to get through this. We're going to find a solution. I wrote the very first policy for farmers in Florida.
Oh, you did? Wow.
I did. It's videotaped. It's on their archive, I guess.
Oh, cool.
I wrote the very first policy. Mine was number 2 in the state. Just one of those things. I thought it would be good. In hindsight, hindsight's always 20/20. I should have seen the challenges that the carrier had, and I didn't. Mm-hmm. But I think that it was kind of funny. We did really well initially, and probably we went through a lot of system changes. But once we got to COVID, really kind of changed everything. To be honest with you.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what happened. It changed the way we think, the way we act, the way we behave. It was like it was a light switch. We were doing really, really well, just clicking every number, the whole 9 yards. And then all of a sudden, COVID happened, and it's like everything changed. It's like the market changed, the people we were interacting with changed, everything. And I don't know if we actually adjusted well to that as a company, not as an agency, but as a company. Our agency never really closed during COVID. We kept open I think we had to close down for like 2 weeks or 2 months, a month maybe, I think. But then our team was yelling and screaming they want to come back to the office. Okay.
Everyone was stir crazy at home. I got to get away from my family. Let me come back to work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's really where they were. And it was just one of those things. But, so that's kind of the journey into the farmer's world. We bought another agency. My wife, Nicole, bought an agency in April of 2021.
Okay.
An existing farmer's agency. The idea was that, and I did that, and they said, we have to keep those separate. Okay, we'll do that. Then we were eventually able to combine the two agencies together, and that was the end of 22. Yeah, end of 22. November 22, we combined both agencies. That's when I stepped out and no longer was with Farmers. So it's been a little over a year since I've been with Farmers. And I decided that I wanted to go independent. So that's kind of where we are today. I have Bob Adams' agency, and my wife has Adams' agency. So
how did that, so from what my understanding is most of the time the farmer's contract prevents those situations, right? The husband and wife, independent, captive. Was that different in Florida?
From a contractual standpoint, they can't prevent me from doing my craft.
Sure.
That's what I do. I mean, I've been in it 33 years. How are they going to, that's just, they can't prevent us from, I think it's somewhat of a misconception, or they can put in a contract all day long in Florida, but it's not enforceable.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So going back independent now, and then obviously Nicole's agency is gonna be gone because Farmers pulled out of Florida. So when she kept the Farmers agency and you started to back up independent again, did you go direct with your carriers again, or did you join a cluster or an aggregator this time around?
So, I mean, I really haven't done anything to date. I'm kind of just waiting to see what happens with Farmers. I am part of an organization called Valor.
Okay.
And so I do have Valor Insurance. They're out of Easton, Pennsylvania. Absolutely phenomenal people. I know Lucas Hathaway, who's a Farmers agent. He's part of their group as well.
Okay.
And I just, it's one of those things where I feel like we need to. They're just a great group, and they have good values, and so one of the things that I can bring to the table is the Florida experience, and the Florida. I still have markets that want me to be a part of their group. The carriers want me to represent them, and I bring that to Valor.
So is Valor an agency that you work under with a sub-producer code, or is that a cluster or an aggregator? I'm not familiar with them.
Yeah, they're basically, I wouldn't call them an aggregator, and I wouldn't call them a cluster. We basically are agency partners.
Okay. Gotcha. I was pulling them up online. So it's valorinsurance.com is the website. Just if anyone's trying to look for that resource down there. So you've been really happy with them so far?
Yeah. I mean, we're limited. We're limited in the on personal lines here in Florida currently. That will change once I fully engage with them. Very heavily involved on the commercial side, which we've never done any commercial with Farmers at all. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So, I've been real happy. I like the leadership.
Okay. Good. So, so 33 years as an agent and captive twice, independent twice. That's so much experience. You mentioned in the very beginning that you would encourage everybody to have a really good understanding of their contract, the exit clauses, as well as controlling their own data. What about things around like marketing or staffing that were different between captive and independent agencies? Was there any big differences there that you experienced that agents maybe should kind of have a heads up on?
I think, it's kind of funny that Allstate never had any staffing requirements. Farmers had the staffing requirements in order to get the bonuses or whatever you were going to get, qualify for topper or whatever. I'm big on staff your agency accordingly. Forget the bonus, forget the money, because I can tell you at the end of the day, if you staff your agency to be profitable, it'll be profitable. And the money's, so I got a $5,000 trip. Yay.
Which they add to your income and you get taxed on. That's the funny thing about toppers. Yeah, I didn't even know that. For the first, I went to toppers 4 times. And the first 2, I didn't even know. One of my CPA on my 3rd year, he's the one who found it in the folio thing. And I was like, what? They income me? That's not even a free trip. That's not a free trip.
Yeah.
I could have just went on my own trip.
You paid taxes on it.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's when I stopped going to the conference part of toppers. So I went the 2 years. The other 2 years I went, I just enjoyed the trip. I didn't go to a single meeting. People would ask me like, what they talk about at toppers? I'm like, I don't know. I didn't go to meetings. I'm basically paying for this trip. So why would I go?
Yeah. Why would you go?
It was very eye-opening. I had no idea.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing people need to understand is, staff your agency accordingly. Mm-hmm. Staff your agency to profitability. Don't staff it to some outside carrier's requirement that has nothing to do with your agency and how it operates. Because they don't know, they don't understand, and they don't care.
Yeah. and what about marketing? What was different about marketing from each side?
Well, I think I kind of was getting into that a little bit when I said, when I made the transition into farmers and I looked at the two, do I do a boutique agency or do I do the farmers? Do I want to recreate all the marketing? Do I want to recreate the systems? And, I think nowadays it's a little easier. I mean, there's so many tools. ChatGPT. I mean, God, we use ChatGPT every single day. To write a simple email I mean, we automate so many things with Zapier, with, Agency Zoom, with Easy Links, with, you name it. Everything's automated today. So from that standpoint, it's a little bit easier. Because there's more tools available. And I encourage everybody, if you're not using ChatGPT, you're missing the game, because it literally writes our emails for us. So
have you played with the GPTs yet? The GPTs, the individualized personal programmable GPTs that they've come out with? Apparently I can't get my words out today. Oh, it's so crazy. I'm in the process of making my own copywriter GPT that copyrights the way I write. It's crazy. So now you can program them individually to specifically do certain things and even upload your own content. So I have so much automation I built over the years, and I took my templated automation that has what I know to work based on my insurance experience and upload that. And that's its knowledge base, with other knowledge, of course, as well, but it'll pull in. But there's some crazy things. So I agree. If you guys aren't using it, you're just working a hell of a lot harder than you have to. That's kind of what it boils down to.
Yeah. I mean, I went the other day, I was creating a on the fly. Heck, it might've been Christmas Day on my iPad, creating an ebook for commercial insurance for landscapers.
Wow, that's cool. That's so specific.
Yeah. So we'll do that as a giveaway. We'll do that, as an enticer to download to get a lead to target that. I'm doing another one for coffee shops.
Jeez.
So it's not that I'm writing it. It's just it's so much easier to do. So from a marketing standpoint, I think there's so many tools out there that are available that I didn't have, obviously, even 5 years ago. I think the landscape has completely changed. One thing I will say is, one of the things that we do, we kind of live in I don't want to say a retirement area, but
the whole state of Florida is a retirement area.
Come on, let's just be real. So I was shocked that direct mail still works. I mean, at my prior agency, I was like, no more direct mail, no more. I'm tired of spending thousands of dollars a month for no leads. The leads we're getting, forget it. And next thing you know, we come down to Lakewood Ranch, and they work. So
know your target audience, right?
Know your target audience. And also this, I mean, the funny thing about it is, I think people have gotten so beat up with email. I'm the same way. If I look at my inbox, half of it's junk. Actually, 75% of it's probably junk. And I go delete, 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 delete. But I get stuff in the mail and actually kind of look at it. It's a different medium.
There's also less of it. I will say, like, the mail marketing, because you have to kind of go through your mail. You might be getting, statements or bills or whatever and things. And I still have a lot of my stuff electronic, but there's still like our house in Caldwell, Idaho, they still send a paper. You actually have to go in to change like your billing there. You have to go into the office. It's just like, we're in Idaho.
Oh my God.
It's old school here in Idaho, parts of Idaho. Anyways, but there's still some of that. So I'm still going through mail and I definitely see it. But I do have an email address that I give out specifically for things that I know I'm probably never going to open or I don't care about because there's a lot of it. So I get that. Like there's a combination. The texting thing for me has been always the biggest, like easiest thing. I've been texting in my agency, for like an agent for 9 years. So like 7 years was like the first couple of years started texting. And, but now there's so many new regulations. It's making that even harder. So, every time there's some kind of new way to contact people, then they go in and regulate it. So, you gotta work around that. But I think in general, mailers is interesting. There's a company, a guy I know who is an agent, started a mailer company for his own agency and then just started doing it for other agents that he knew. And it's amazing how much business he gets from that. And they're really targeted. So there's just, there's no perfect marketing, but I think in general, if you've got several different things going on, right, you're going to have enough to keep you fed. But the problem is agents that sit there and wait for the phone to ring.
Yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that. You got to, if you're going to do that, you might as well just close up the shop.
Go be a producer at somebody else's agency. That's what I tell people. Like,
exactly.
And like you said, you like to sell.
And honestly, I don't want you there because, in our agency, one of the things we're doing is everybody's got to produce leads. It's not up to just me. Everybody's engaged in the game of lead generation. Everybody from a receptionist all the way to me. We're all lead generators. So that's just the name of the game. I mean, I keep preaching this to everybody in our agency, and I have for many, many years. And sometimes people get upset with me, but I don't care. We are a sales organization, period. At the end of the day, we are measured by our sales.
Well, you can live or die by them, right? But like we were talking about with carriers, if you don't continue to write business with the carrier, it doesn't matter how much business you have with them, they'll still pull that contract. So yes, your retention and customer service, but you have to sell. And agencies, that was interesting to me when I started up, when I would hire staff, and there'd be people that I would interview who say, I don't want to do sales, I only do a customer service. But if you can't service to sell, then you really can't be in an agency because now you're an expense and you can't be just an expense. I mean, I 100% agree with it. The agents that say, well, I have these people that don't sell. Why are they there? Get them out of there. Get people who will sell. Maybe they're not lead gen, but maybe they should be at least cross-selling at the very minimum. Asking those questions.
We have, and this is the thing that I think that a lot of people need to understand when they move from captive to an independent world, your KPIs are going to change. And I think In the captive world, you're really geared towards sales and meeting the carrier's goals to a certain degree. They basically are dictating to you how much they want you to sell. Now, and most of the agents look at that and go, okay, this is what I need to do this year in order to make the trip. And that's how they look at their business, right? In the independent world, everything changes from the perspective of, okay, I got 14 carriers I got to feed. I got to give this one 500,000. I got to give this one X amount of dollars, this one X amount of dollars. And I got to make sure that the loss ratio is X. And I got to make sure my retention's X for each carrier. And so your matrix changes significantly. And there's a lot of balls to be juggled. Whereas on the captive side, they're basically juggling those balls for you.
Well, and even like you were saying about all the different requirements, the underwriting requirements, right? Not only are you thinking like, oh, this is my home policy and I need to know what's required, because I run several social media groups and one of them is a farmers group, and people are asking all the time, is this eligible? Is that eligible? Is this eligible? Is that eligible? And you've got one policy to write. Can you imagine 14 of them? And you've got to know all those requirements and place them appropriately. Not to mention 14 different commission checks. People forget this part a lot. As a captive agent, you're probably getting one commission check. And when I started working with independents, because I've never been independent, but I work with them. And when they started asking me, hey, can my CRM help me with like a commission tracking payments of these policies? And I'm like, interesting. So we started solving for that, and how to do that for agents. But I never thought about that as a captive. Like, oh, right, I need to make sure I got paid on all the Travelers and the Safeco and the Progressive and the, auto owners or whatever. And you've got to audit that because they're not checking. If they missed it, they missed it. They're not looking for you. You're the only one checking. There's no folio department.
No. But I will tell you that they are a lot more efficient than
I can imagine that.
They I remember getting Travelers or Hartford or a Progressive, and you could audit that fairly easy because of the commission, because of the report. When I was a farmer's agent, I wrote a tremendous amount of craft lake business outside of farmers. There's literally zero chance you're going to audit the folio for craft lake. I've literally tried to do it and have spent weeks trying to audit it. It's you would have to hire a forensic accountant to do it. So
and they aren't cheap.
And they're not cheap.
I'm working with one right now.
I thought, they're not cheap. So, you're absolutely right. I mean, yes, you get one check from farmers, and it's there on the first every single, and that's true with every carrier. With the captive carriers. With independents, when you're on the independent side, it may show up the first, it may show up the 10th, it may show up the 15th. Heck, it could show up on the 18th, and you'll get checks, you'll get payments all through the month. So you got to be able to, from a cash flow standpoint, you've got to be able to manage your cash.
Yeah, very different. I even just this with the New Year's, we had some people in the group saying, when are we going to get our folio deposit? Is it going to be before the holiday, after the holiday, that I need to process payroll? And I get I've been there where like, oh, I don't have enough money to pay payroll until I get my folio. And like, you're like, hey guys, you're going to get your paycheck late. Like I've totally been there because I've started scratch and I took over an agency and I sold agencies and it's really stressful. But on the independent side, that's totally different. And then the other side of that too, that I saw that was interesting is farmers and probably most captives, they have some like financing set up for you, right? There's options.
Yeah.
There's banks
Yeah.
or credit unions that work with them
Sure.
because they have agreements. On the independent side, getting financing is really different. Did you ever have any experience with that?
So I never really had any issues financing. I'm big on working with small local banks.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, nowadays it's almost impossible to find one. And that's only because you can build relationships with them. And you get to know the people. With farmers, I know that we had the relationship with Farmers Credit Union.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I won't say anything.
I always felt like the financing, if you needed it, and for the agents that needed it was very simple through that. Whereas
easier.
if you're doing it outside on the independent side, especially if you're new and you don't have 2 to 3 years of revenue, it's really difficult to find financing. So for those agents that are thinking, well, I'll finance my startup, my transition while I'm getting my payments quarterly or monthly or whatever that looks like, that's one of the first things. If you need it, that's one of the first things you're gonna have to nail down, because that's gonna be probably one of the hardest. That and appointments, if you don't have the cash to actually get you going.
Yeah, I highly recommend, if you are moving from captive to an independent, you need to have a line of credit. You really do. It's scary, I know, but you need to have that safety net there. And you need to have that. I would say get the line of credit before you make the switch.
Yeah, and I think that's true in most businesses. That's true in most businesses, though. I worked in banking. I was in banking for 9 years with Wells Fargo and then Chase, and I was a commercial banker for a year. And one of the things that we heard all the time was that businesses go look for financing when they need it, and then they can't qualify.
And then they can't qualify.
So when business is booming and life is good, get your financing in place, like a line of credit, because you don't have to pay on it unless you're using it.
Yeah.
Because you will inevitably have that dip, and you got to be able to ride that out. I completely agree with that, but I think that's true of just any business. As soon as you can qualify for financing, get something in place, because the day will come. And the number one killer of small businesses in the first 5 years is cash flow. That's all it is.
Flow. Yeah. 100%.
I'll have it in place.
Exactly.
Well, Bob, we're a little over the hour, which is fine, but you've shared so much information, and I so appreciate your time and willing to tell your story. And maybe we'll have a follow up to this after the whole Florida farmers thing. We'll see how that all irons out. But is there anything else that you think, is that the date? Is it May 1st? Completely done?
I guess April 30th or whatever was the last day for her, at least for her.
Dang, but isn't Folio done January? I was told there was no more payments in January.
There were some that terminated December 31.
Okay.
And then there's a whole nother group that is going to April, because some people, you could have terminated early, or there were some that because Nicole had a 6-month window in her contract.
Oh, got it. So depended on the contract. So two different phases, basically.
Different. We had probably 3 or 4 different contracts here in Florida. So it just depended on. Yeah, it's crazy. Some had arbitration clauses. Some didn't have arbitration clauses. Wow. Some said 3 months. Some said 6 months. Some said
all over the place.
Yeah, and nobody knew which one was what.
Yeah, I'm sure. Is there anything that you want to wrap up with or reiterate for anyone that's watching?
No, I mean, listen, just really understand your contract. At the end of the day, when you make the switch, if you make the switch, understand your exit. And that is the most important thing to truly understand. Everything else will work itself out. Cash flow, markets. I have an old saying that, give me lemons, I'm going to make lemonade. Give me oranges, I'm going to make orange juice. Give me apples, I'm going to sell apple juice. So, sell what's on the market today. And I had an old agent once tell me this. I've always kept this in mind, because I was scared to death when I joined Allstate. And he said, Bob, sell one policy a day. Just sell one policy a day, you'll be all right. And you think about that for a second. If I sell one policy, the person next to me sells one policy, and the person on the other side of me sells one policy, we're doing all right. So, yeah. So there you go.
Awesome. Well, I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time and being willing to share the story. And we'll have this up real soon. And I'm excited to stay in contact and see how everything pans out.
Yeah, me too. I appreciate what you're doing. I really appreciate what you're doing for the quite frankly, the insurance community. It means a lot to, I know for what you're doing on the farmer side, with agents that are leaving. It's important to understand that we still have a community, and it's important. So, thank you for doing that.
You're very welcome. And thanks again for being on. Appreciate it.